What's your mission in your business?
I really want to create a better dynamic in our world. My influence in doing that is my ability to help people, owners, and leadership teams have a better life, really, because they have someone else helping them with this process and they can go home and they can breathe at the end of the day and they can actually like have the time to spend with their family and they're not worried about all these things. On the candidate side, it's the same thing. I want to put people in good organizations that have the right values and that have the right growth. And I want to bring the people that want that and are like, that's where they're supposed to be. And I want to bring them there as well because I want to create that value for them because it's just all of it is just really feels good to help people. Because work is so important. What we do is so important. We're there a lot. It affects our mental health. It affects everything. Being able to create an environment or a way of doing it that's very seamless and easy and very honest and just upfront is just something that I feel like is needed in our world, honestly.
Heroes are an inspiring group of people. Every one of them, from the larger-than-life comic book heroes you see on the big silver screen, to everyday heroes that let us live the privileged lives we do. Every hero has a story to tell, from the doctor saving lives at your local hospital, to the war veteran down the street who risked his life for our freedom, to the police officers and the firefighters who risk their safety to ensure ours. Every hero is special and every story worth telling. But there is one class of heroes that I think is often ignored: the entrepreneur, the creator, the producer. The ones who look at the problems in this world and think to themselves, you know what, I can fix that. I can help people. I can make a difference. Then they go out and do exactly that by creating a new product or introducing a new service. Some go on to change the world. Others make a world of difference to their customers. Welcome to The Hero Show. Join us as we pull back the masks on the world's finest heropreneurs and learn the secrets to their powers, their success, and their influence, so you can use those secrets to attract more sales, make more money, and experience more freedom in your business. I'm your host, Richard Matthews, and we are on in 3, 2, 1.
Hello and welcome back to the Hero Show. My name's Richard Matthews. Today I have the pleasure of having Suman Cherry online. Suman, are you there?
I'm right here. Thanks for
Awesome.
having me.
So glad to have you on here. And I guess what I wanted to start off with before we get too far into anything is, why don't you tell me a little bit about who you are and what you're known for, and then we'll dive into your bio a little bit, and we'll go from there.
So it's always like a difficult question, right? Like, who am I, right? So I guess professionally, I mean, I'm a recruiter. I've been in recruiting for like 20 years, and I've done a lot of recruiting on all aspects of recruiting, and I've placed a lot of different people, worked a lot of different companies, all about culture and understanding the best process, right? On a personal level, I have a child. I have one daughter. She's almost 11, and she's the main show, like she's the main event, in our house. Like I think that's how it is when you have like one child. I've been with my husband for a long time, and my husband has a business as well, so we're both like very entrepreneur based, and we're just I'm someone who just like really likes to expand and grow and be challenged and all the things that come with it. So that's kind of who
Yeah,
I am on
awesome.
that show.
My wife and I have been married. We'll be 15 years in about 20 days, which is cool. And we
Yeah.
got 4 kids. So I've got, my oldest is 13 and my youngest is 4. So we got them all across the board. And uh, so it's super fun. And yeah, I run the company. My wife runs the house. So, which is great because I wouldn't be able to run the company if she wasn't running the house.
Right. No, I
Especially
understand
with
that
4
for
kids
sure.
and homeschooling and traveling and all the stuff that we do. It's crazy. So
Yeah.
let me just run through your bio real quick so people know who you are, and then we'll dive into your story and go from
Awesome.
there. So Subin has over 20 years of experience in the recruiting world. She's honed her ability to quickly grasp the needs of both her clients and candidates. As a matchmaker at heart, she takes pride in placing in over 500 employees in industries such as medical, oil, gas, construction, real estate. She understands the struggles companies face to find the right match and is committed to creating healthy and easy experience for all involved. And I have to tell you, as someone who has just hired my 13th employee just this last week, getting the right people is such a key aspect of running a successful company that I've never worked with a recruiter. And I'm curious to know what your thought is, before we even get into your story, the difference between hiring on your own and using a recruiter to find the right person. Like, why would someone like me, who hires to talent regularly, come to you?
So, it's interesting this conversation because I actually had another podcast and we had the same conversation. And this is something that he was talking about with his clients. It's about time, right? It's
Mhm.
about how much time do you have. When you own a business or you're a leader of a business, you have a lot of responsibilities in that role with the
Yeah.
existing people you have and the process piece and all of it, right? Like it all stops at you when you're the CEO of a business, or the
Chris.
president or the owner. And yeah, the people that come on board your bus, because you're driving the bus, right? And you need those right people to be on that bus with you, because that's going to decide where your bus is going to go. But the challenge is, if you do it on your own, yeah, you definitely can. But the challenge is how much time do you really have to dedicate to the process itself, right? It's not like the process itself is necessarily hard. It's time consuming. Sorting
Yeah,
through hundreds of resumes is time consuming. Talking to multiple people is time consuming. Setting up interviews is time consuming. Evaluating candidates who maybe didn't fit every single box, and then managing all the other things. I mean, I have clients say to me, like, literally, I can actually lay in bed and not worry about this. Like, it's something I worry about, as an owner of a business. Like, what if I can't find this person? What if I can't fulfill this job? Like all of us have, right? And having this external place, whether you work with me or an external recruiter, it gives you more of a safety, and it allows you to have more time to work on the things that you really want to work on your business. Because most people don't even like recruiting. When people ask me all the time, like, I would hate your job. Like, I can't believe you do that for a life. Like, this is your career. And I'm like, yeah, but like, this is what is my specialize in. This is what I live. So it's a very different experience for me than if I'm doing 30, 40, 50, 60, 100 different things and trying to squeeze in an interview, trying to squeeze in that call. So it's a very different place. So that's
it's a
what I would
different.
say.
Yeah, it's a different world for sure. And I know, like, my experience, I've got a pretty, like, I don't know, I don't want to call it robust, because it's probably not as robust as your process, but I have a process we follow. And when we looking to hire someone for a role, we generally hire 3 people for the same role, and we'll have them complete all of the same tasks and see how they're like doing. There's a lot of work that goes into managing 3
Yeah.
people through the hiring process, to decide who's going to be the best fit for culture and all sorts of other things. And it would be um, amazing to have someone else do that for you.
Well, and also I think what we bring as well is we don't have our model's different, and we don't have to go into all the details, but we're not attached to the candidates because we do everything on an hourly consultative model. So we come in as an extension of your team. So we're very consultative based. Like, we're understanding really who you are as a culture, who are the players, and what types of people are going to fit in, but we're not attached to the whole process. So we can give very unbiased opinions, or we're very direct with our approach. It's a lot of transparency and honesty, and
That
that's a very important piece of it.
So the thing that sticks out to me, and this is because one of my personal goals is, this might come across morbid, but it's one of the things I always think about is we've got a larger company now, right? We got like 13 people and like 30 family members that rely on the income that our business produces. And
Right.
so I always look at my business as like, hey, if I get hit by a bus tomorrow, how does it continue, right? How do all those
Yeah.
people continue to get fed? How do all of our clients continue to get served? Not that I plan on getting hit by a bus anytime soon, not in my plans, but I want my
Right.
business to be able to survive. Maybe I break my leg and can't work for a couple of weeks, right? Those kind of things.
Yeah.
I need to know that everything gets taken care of. And one of my current goals is I've got a list of things that I'm like, these are the things that I'm responsible for all the time. And one of those is hiring, right? And I'm like, I don't have really good systems in place that someone else can be taking care of that for me. And I don't have a sellable business. I don't have a protected business. I don't have a business that is where it needs to be until each of those processes, to include hiring, payroll, sales. Like, there's several things that as a CEO, you're like, in the building phase, right? Of like, we've got our
Right.
operations
Yeah.
taken care of. We've got we've got most of our things that we do for delivery taken care of, and we're starting to work on, okay, what are the next systems we need to put in place so the business is not Richard's business. It is its own entity
Right.
that
Exactly.
thrives on its own.
Exactly.
And so hiring for me, and it's kind of interesting to be in this conversation, was I literally just put it down on my list the other day with my operations manager. I was like, which systems do we need to start focusing on next? And hiring was at the top of the list, because I was like, I can't be in charge of that forever. So that's where
No.
someone like you would come in and help take my
Yeah.
business with that part.
Yeah, and I think I think that the thing is, recruiting is your competitive edge as a client, as a company as well. Your ability to attract good people, or the right people, is going to set you apart from your competitors as well. That is a very important piece, because when you're going out to market, or when an owner is coming out to market, or a smaller business, for instance, they're going to have limitations on how much they're going to spend, as much as how much time they're going to really source their, how long those conversations are going to be. The whole process is going to get shortened, right? But when you have a competitive edge, like a recruiting agency helping you, it allows you to draw out a larger net, because that's what you ultimately want. You want, like I tell my clients, like my goal isn't necessarily to find the right person for you, because you might get a internal referral, you might get someone else. My goal is to provide you really strong candidates where you're like, I don't know which best person to choose out of the bunch, right? Versus, I guess I'm going to choose this person because they're the best out of the group. And that's really what ends up happening a lot of times.
Yeah, I've been there. I get
Like,
that.
well, I guess this will work.
It makes a lot
And
of
then
sense
later
too.
on.
And I know, like for me, one of the things that we talk a lot about in our company is how important the company culture is, and how important that is to like creating it's its own competitive advantage, right? Where
Yeah.
you know, I had a friend of mine. I was talking about this recently. I was like, you know, my favorite like flex in business is not how much revenue we make or how many clients we serve or any of those things. It's how long our employees stay with us and how excited they are to be a part of our team.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And so like my longest standing employee has been with us for almost like 13 years, like on
That's
part-time
amazing.
project-based stuff all the way up till now. And when we were finally able to offer him full-time work, he was like, fuck yeah, please let me come. I'd love to work with you full-time. And
Right.
that's the way I want to run my company. So, you know, the human aspect can't be ignored for building your company, building
No.
your systems.
No, and the thing is a lot of times the clients I work with, and we're very specific on who we work with too, because we really want to work with those companies that have the core values, but don't just live it from a stick piece of paper on the board, but actually live it in their everyday life, in the way they are leaders and the way they treat the people, and even really who they are, right? Our values extend outside of our work environment, right? It all extends into our life, right? So when we are talking to clients, the challenge is that people don't even know that this amazing company has a position open. Like, you
Yeah.
know what I mean? These large companies dominate things. They have a lot of money for advertising and marketing and all these things, and everyone has this perception of them. And then people go work for them, and it's just they're treated like, that they're just robots, or oh, I'm sorry, or they get laid off, but they don't even know, and they show up to go into work, and
Oh no,
oh,
that's
by the
terrible.
way, you don't have a job anymore. I mean, that's what they did,
Yeah.
right? Isn't that what Google did? Like,
Yeah, I heard that.
thousands of people. I mean,
I have this concept I'm working on that I've named now, but I don't have all the pieces like worked out yet. But I'm calling it family first entrepreneurship. And the idea is, you know, ever since the pandemic, but even if it's a few years before that, since when we actually started building our company, the remote work has really changed the way companies can exist today. Not every company, right? You know, you talk about
right,
oil and gas. Someone probably needs to be touching things there, but
right,
for a lot of companies, a lot of especially like we're in the service-based business where
right.
we don't have location like on location work getting done. We can be 100% remote,
Yeah,
and we're not the only company like that. There's a lot of us around, and so it's a
right.
large sector of the market, and there's a new model for work. And one of the things that I've noticed is that your younger generation, so Gen X, millennials, Gen Z in particular, they don't put their finances, like how much they're getting paid, at the top of their priority list. It's actually number three. And like looking into the research on it, it's flexibility first, impact second, and income third. And so
Right.
I started looking at in our company, how do we build our company around that sort of ethos that like every one of my staff members knows, like your first priority should be go to your kid's baseball game, not show up at work today. Right. And how do we build a company that not just allows for that, but thrives with that being the environment? And my goal is to be successful enough with that model over the course of the next several years that that other companies want to emulate it. But that's sort of my ethos on how we're trying to recruit and build our own culture.
And I agree with you completely. Like, something shifted after COVID. And I'm seeing it even with people who are, outside of the Gen Zers and the
Mm-hmm.
Gen, because I work with a lot of millennials. Like, the age range I work with a lot is usually like mid millennial to moving into like the Gen X, right?
Yeah.
That's kind of my kind of range. It's the same as well. I mean, don't get wrong. People want to be paid what they're, people want to be paid. Like they have to be paid.
They want to be
They
paid a fair
feel like
wage.
they're being valued, right? What the market is. But that's not what the questions they're asking. Like when COVID happened and everyone went back home, everyone really took it there. A lot of people looked at their life. And I think you can see it in the fact that there's been so many shifts in people's relationships. I mean, there's so much going on, right? You get on
Yeah.
Facebook and you're like, okay, what's going on now? But and this happened like with the job side too, because people went home and like started realizing that their mental health and their connection with their family and missing out on the baseball games and missing out on these things times with their kids, that was lacking in their life and they need that more in their life. I mean, I work with so many um candidates and that is the reason they've left. They're like, well, I really, I was a good environment, I liked the job, I was paid well, but it didn't align with my, my child's school schedule and they weren't flexible about that. And then, we find them a company where there is flexibility, like not even a big flexibility. It's just, yeah, you can come an hour late early, yeah, you can leave an hour early. It's just that simple of a flexibility piece, right?
Yeah.
And that's what people want, and people want to be part of something where the impact piece is so important. Part of something bigger and blueprint of something positive for our world, because everybody knows that the way things are don't really working for people, right? So a lot of people want to be that change and they can see that in their work environment. It's not about being a family, it's about being a community. Let's be honest, right? You're a community. You have different opinions, they have different belief systems, all those things. You grow up differently, but there's this ability when you're in that reality to be able to hopefully have like good relationships with people and like collaborate with people and build something that could impact our world in a better place. And I think that's what people, and that's I think what you're talking about as well, is that's what people want to feel when they walk into an organization, or not
That
everyone,
their
you
work
know.
has value, right? Like
Yes.
it's not, I'm not just trading my time for money, because if I was
Yeah.
just doing that, I could spend time at home with my kids and my family and the things that I really want to do. But if I need to pay for my life, can I also, if I'm going to take time away
Yes.
from my kids, can I take time away from my kids and have it be an impactful part on the world, right? I want to have
Yes.
both. And the
Yes.
reality is we can build companies that do that, if we just started focusing on it, right? If we started thinking about that, and it's the next iteration of making the world a better place, is how do we make the workplace better? And so
And
I really like that.
yeah, and I feel the same way. I mean, honestly, when I started this business, that was really the basis of where I was. It was that the way that I was doing it before on a contingent model, which I had done for so many years, didn't really align to my values anymore. Because for me, I'm not saying this is all about all recruiting, but there is a hustle. There is a little bit of there can be a lack of transparency. There can be a little bit of, and I don't want to say this is the case with all the costs associated with them. It is very cost prohibitive for a lot of smaller businesses to spend $25,000 on a placement
Yeah.
fee, right? So when I created this business, it was really with the understanding of I wanted to offer something different for companies of how to hire, but really, I really do it from a place where I want to change. Like I don't ghost people. I don't I do not give candidates feedback. I hold my clients accountable. Like I am very upfront with them when I bring them on as a client. I'm like, this is the model. I need feedback within 2 or 3 days, or I put a hold on your position. Like I will stop if I reach out to you, I haven't heard from you. I'm going to put a hold on your position because I'm not going to work on positions where I don't get feedback. I'm not going to do the ghosting thing. I'm not going to have a client that doesn't want to communicate. That's not If that's what you want, then there's another models for that, but that's not what this model is, right?
Yeah,
So,
that's really cool. So what I want to get into then is I want to get into your
right.
actual story, how you got here, right?
Oh
Your
yeah.
origin story, right? Every good comic book hero has an origin story. It's the thing that made them into the hero they are today. And I want to hear that story. Were you born a hero, or were you bit by a radioactive spider that made you get into recruiting, right? Or did you start in a job and eventually move over to become an entrepreneur? Basically, where did you come from?
It's so interesting because I've always like loved people. I'm a huge lover of people. I'm interested in people. Like I want to know what their story is. I'm sure you're the same, right? Because you do this podcast.
Yeah.
I'm interested. I want to know what people's stories are, and I want to understand who they are. I've always been interested in that. So I've always been in sales. I did sales in college. I did weight loss sales. I don't know. I weighed like 90 pounds, but they hired me to do weight loss sales. Those poor women. I think now, because I'm that age now, and I think, God, I was so bad at that job, But anyway, but I mean, I liked it. I liked that service-based sales, right? I liked working with people. So then I did that for a number of years through college, and then out of college, I got a job working at Coors Brewing Company, which is so random, and I got a job doing marketing and things. I did that for a few years, and then I had this guy call me up, and he was a recruiter. And I said, "What do you do?" Like, he was asking me questions about a job or something, some selling fax machines. Oh my God. Anyway. And I was like, "What do you do?" And he's like, "I'm a recruiter." And I'm like, "I want to do what you do." He was like, "Really?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I want your job. I want to be a recruiter." So I just kind of threw it out there, right? And then, like everything else, you kind of like just go on with your life. And then I had one of my friends was working at a company, and they had a assistant recruiting position, of course, a medical recruiting position. It paid not a lot of money. It was a total grassroots, bare bottom, like training, like 200, 300, 400, 500 dials a day. I mean, they were watching your numbers. You were recording yourself on tape recorders. You're having to listen to yourself. I mean, it was legit. And I did that for a long time. I did that for a number of years. And then I dealt with something really hard in my own life. I dealt with the loss of my first husband in my late 20s. So that kind of derailed my kind of life a little bit. So I
Yeah.
took some time off, but that experience, something like that, it kind of just changes you, when you go through experiences that are challenging, right? And you kind of see who you're made of at that point. And so then I know I got remarried, and my husband was like, "Why do you work for people? Like, why do you work for people? Like, you're making all these people money. Go like work for yourself." And I was like, "Okay." And so then I started working for myself, and it was fun. And I just brought in all these clients, these companies that I'd worked with before. They just wanted to work with me. So I started doing that in the oil and gas world. And then I ended up having the opportunity to staff this $150 million facility in Houston with like hundreds of people.
Wow.
And I did that for a number of years, and I made a lot of money, but it was unbelievably stressful. And I almost got divorced during it. My daughter was really young at the time, and it was just so much. Like you were talking about, there has to be a balance, right? The priority has to be the family. The priority has to be those places. And then everything stems from that. So the whole thing failed. 1 year I was making, $500,000. Next year, my husband's like, "Okay, we're going to have to figure this out. Like, what is this? So that's what happened. And that was, I don't know how many years ago that was, like maybe 8 years ago. And then I took kind of a break from recruiting for a little bit. I was just like, I need a little time. And then I'd get back into contingent recruiting again. And I started working with these partners, but I just never I started thinking, I hate recruiting. Like, I hate recruiting. I hate recruiting. I kept thinking this. I think I hate recruiting. I have to find a new job. So I went on some tangent of, I went through my own healing. I mean, I'm sure all of us have done, a lot of us done the work, and having to go through all my stuff and then I was like, I hate this. Like, no, I don't like this. But then I had a client reach out to me during COVID, and he just was like, "Would you be interested in doing some contract work?" And I was like, never had done a contract. And I started doing a contract, and I just loved it. It was just totally different. It wasn't I hated recruiting. I just hated the way I was having to do it.
The model.
I hated every bit of it. I didn't like the lack of communication. I didn't like the fact that you just didn't have any skin in the game you didn't have that relationship with the client. But when someone's paying you, they're just more motivated to talk to you and to communicate with you. And then I did it, and it was like really successful. And then I was like, well, let's do it again. And then I don't know, a year later, here we are. And I brought on, I don't even know how I swear I get new clients like all the time, but it's great. I love it. And we fired great people, and people who this was the job they were wanting. And they're like, "Oh my gosh." And there's a lot of smaller companies we work with, just like under 50 people, a lot of them. And I work with the CEOs and the owners and the leadership team. And I help them with the whole process, like just start to finish. And I just love it. And it feels really good. And I just want to change. I'm like you, I want to change how hiring's done. I just feel like this could be a really sustainable model for
Yeah,
people.
I love that whole story because it's a classic entrepreneurial story, right? You're all over the place, and then you realize that like I can make this better, right? I can do this better. I can add value here that didn't exist before, and you can offer things to the market that weren't being offered before, right? That's a reason why
Wow.
you're seeing the success for it. And right, even just hearing you talk about it, I'm like, man, that's exactly what like I would never have considered a recruiter with the model that we, the other model, right? The
Right.
$25,000 for replacement. I was like,
Yes.
I can't afford that, and it's not, and I can do a good job on my own. It doesn't cost me 25 grand to do the work.
Right.
Um,
But if it only costs you a few $1,000s, like other five, you're like, well, I just have someone else do it and I can work on other things.
do it, and I can work on other things. But for 25 grand, that's
Yes.
this is steep.
Yeah, yeah, and the risk in it too, right? There's a lot of risk because they leave 6 months a year, and I'm not saying they're all, but they're 20 to 25% placement fees. I mean, some of my placement fees, even for just administrative people, they would run $12,000, $15,000. Which, if you're a bigger company, it's something you absorb, fine. But if you're a smaller organization, spending $100,000 in recruiting on 4 candidates in a year, woo,
Yeah,
that's a lot of money.
that's like a quarter of our income, right?
Yes,
Like we can't afford it.
yes. But this model allows like companies that are smaller, that are like smaller companies, but need to find good people and have the same expertise as. And honestly, I don't know how, I don't want to, we're pretty good at what we do too, because we spend a lot of time with the candidates. We
Mhm.
talk to them, we spend the time, like, we're not just sticking something against a wall and hoping. But, and the thing is about the entrepreneur journey, like you said, it is like a lot of turns, and it's painful. It's falling down. It's a lot of, but that's part of
It's a
it.
reward game, right? Like that's one of the things that I used to when I was a younger entrepreneur, because I've been doing this for a long time. I got into my first business when I was like 11 years old. And
What
I
did you
used to
do?
think
What was your
I
business?
I convinced my father I can't remember if I was 11 or 13, but I convinced my father to give me a $50 loan on like a 10% repay back, and take me to a large box store and buy giant candy bars. And I had a whole backpack full of giant candy bars that you couldn't find on campus, and I was selling them at like 3x markup, and
Yeah.
I made $1,500 in sales before I got shut down
Oh,
by the campus authorities who were like, you can't have a business
man, that was
until you're 16 or whatever.
that's so awesome. I was an entrepreneur as well. Like I must have been like 6 or 7, maybe 8. And I used to like go and we would collect all the pine cones in the neighborhood. And I would knock on people's doors and try to sell them for like a penny a pine cone.
Genius.
But and people were like, just take the pennies. I don't want the pine cones. But yeah, I mean, like, I was the same. I've always been like very entrepreneur, like always trying to figure out ways to add value and things.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's just something too, like I used to think anyone can be an entrepreneur, and what I've realized is like it's not anyone can be an entrepreneur. Not everyone can deal with that risk reward stuff. But great entrepreneurs can come from anywhere, right? It's like the classic Ratatouille story on Disney, right?
Yes.
Anyone anyone can be an entrepreneur, but not just anyone can be an entrepreneur, right? You have to sort of be willing to have that crazy roller coaster ride in pursuit of how do I add value to the world. Uh,
Right.
and
And that's what it is. That's what it comes down to. Because it's really the money comes from everything else. So that's what I believe. And I truly believe that, right? I believe that when you're serving the world, and I don't want to go into, I'm not a religious person, but when you're serving the world from yourself, like what your real purpose is and whatever that gift is that you're supposed to give, right? Everything comes back in like unlimited amounts of abundance, whatever that looks like. But in order to get there, you really have to go through the process. Like, 'cause if I hadn't gone through the failures and all the things, like now I understand what my relationship and what needs to, I need to understand, I need to take steps to make sure that that doesn't just happen again. My husband and I can have open conversations about what happened last time so that
yeah,
this time, we've learned and we've grown. But if we hadn't experienced that, right? And we hadn't
you would
repaired that, we wouldn't know how to take on this now, you know?
yeah. There's so much to just the story of like how you get to where you are. I love it. So
You
my
know.
next question for you then is your superpowers, right? Every iconic hero has a superpower, whether that's a fancy flying suit, made by their genius intellect or the ability to call down thunder from the sky or super strength. In the real world, heroes have what I call a zone of genius, which is either a skill that you were born with or a skill that you developed over the course of time that energizes all your other skills. And the way I like to frame it for my guests is if you look at all of your skills that you've developed over the course of your career, there's probably a common thread that ties all of them together. You're seeing this pop up over and over and over again. Anytime you're having successes, you're like, oh, that's part of my strength. What do you think with that framing your superpower is in your business?
I have a very strong ability to process information quickly. I can process information very quickly with my job specifically, and with things with people as well. Like I'm very intuitive in nature. And so I can like very much zone in, like if I'm looking through resumes and like I know exactly the types of candidates I'm looking for and those types of things, I can go through it really fast and process it quickly. And then I can remember very small details about things. I have this ability. I can't remember what I wore yesterday, but I can remember these very minute details about people, what birthdays or how many children they have, or little things, details about them, because I listen. I'm a very good listener. And so I'm able to provide that information, and it creates, what I think my superpower really is? I have an ability for people to feel safe around. I'm very authentic. I'm very real. I'm very there's no mask with me. And so people feel the same to be the same around me as well.
Yeah, it gives people permission, right? Because that's one of the things my wife tells me, and one of my best friends told me. They're like, "You ooze trust, and it's green," right? And it's just that authenticity that when you are just who you are, and you're not wearing a mask, and you're not wearing any of the external things that keep people at a distance for safety, that people just have permission to take their own masks off and be themselves.
Yeah,
That's a rare trait. I would imagine.
And I don't know if it's a learned trait or if it's just something that I think, you use it as a child, because I think as children, we do it because if we're in a situation where we, don't feel emotionally supported, we do naturally become someone who becomes more intuitive of other people's emotions. Right. And so I do think it can be a hindrance for us, because I think as adults, what can happen is it can lead to people pleasing. And I think it can also make us so that we feel like we have to be responsible for everyone else in our lives. Yeah. And also that happens at work as well. So if someone else you're uncomfortable to have conversations with your bosses about, you deserving of a raise, or what's the next step for them, or there's an issue going on. There's almost this feeling of not wanting to rock the boat because there's this fear of what that would look like. So I do think when you're able to have more of an empowered place with it, where you set boundaries around that and you recognize that, then I think you can create that safety by not, like you said, looking from kind of a validation piece from an external place. Because that's what ends up happening, right? We go into this people pleasing place where we want to get validation to feel good. Like, oh, I did all these things for you. I'm so good, right? Because that's what we did as kids, right? Yeah. And then, but as adults, it doesn't work. It worked for us as kids because that was our safety place, because that's how we had to create it. But as adults, we have to put those boundaries up, and then we have to be empowered, and we have to be hold safety for people, but through our own self, not through someone else's place.
And now a quick word from our show's sponsor. Hey there, fellow podcaster. Having a weekly audio and video show on all the major online networks that builds your brand, creates fame, and drives sales for your business doesn't have to be hard. I know it feels that way because you've tried managing your show internally and realize how resource intensive it can be. You felt the pain of pouring 8 to 10 hours of work into just getting 1 hour of content published and promoted all over the place. You see the drain on your resources, but you do it anyways because you know how powerful it is. Heck, you've probably even tried some of those automated solutions and ended up with stuff that makes your brand look cheesy and cheap. That's not helping grow your business. Don't give up though. The struggle ends now. Introducing Push Button Podcasts, a done-for-you service that will help you get your show out every single week without you lifting a finger after you've pushed that stop record button. We handle everything else: uploading, editing, transcribing, writing, research, graphics, publication, and promotion, all done by real humans who know, understand, and care about your brand almost as much as you do. Empowered by our own proprietary technology, our team will let you get back to doing what you love while we handle the rest. Check us out at pushbuttonpodcast.com/hero for 10% off the lifetime of your service with us, and see the power of having an audio and video podcast growing and driving micro celebrity status and business in your niche without you having to lift more than a finger to push that stop record button. Again, that's pushbuttonpodcast.com/hero. See you there. And now, back to the Hero Show.
That's one of my my favorite things about this show, right? If anytime you talk about superpower, the superpower is always one side of a coin, and the other side of it is the fatal flaw, right? So every superpower has kryptonite, and if your superpower is that ability to be authentic and to be the kind of person that everyone just shares their life stories with, the other side of that is, like you said, it's like that people pleasing and being, and learning how to set your own boundaries there. So I guess my question for that is if you are, for me, my fatal flaw, I'm a very systems oriented person. And I'm so that's my superpower, is like building and developing systems around everything that we do.
Right.
But the flip side of that is perfectionism, right? And perfectionism keeps you from shipping. And if you don't ship, you don't have anything. So you've not done anything. You've got it's a really low bar to set for yourself, because it's basically nothingness.
Right.
So, so I have to do things like take the initial, what do you call it? Design portion. And once it's designed and done, I have to immediately hand it off to someone else who's going to finish and implement, because I get bored. I'll either get bored, or I'll be I can tweak it forever and it'll never get shipped, never get put in place. And so I have to have, part of my process is to give it to someone else to finish, right? To push the publish button on.
Right.
And so if the flaw is the people pleasing, how have you learned to overcome that and rectify it, so other people who might suffer from the same sort of fatal flaw can maybe learn from your experience there?
I mean, I'm a firm believer in mentors and coaches and therapists and all the things, space holders, whatever that feels to you. I'm a firm believer that everyone benefits from having people in your life who can hold space for you, especially if you're someone who's a big space holder for other people and safety. You need your own place to be able to, have that space held. So I think that's number one for me. I worked with a lot of people that held space for me, and I was able to kind of let go of that sort of place of what happens if I put that boundary up, and they're like, okay, what does that look like? And really be able to have that awareness that it even exists. I think number one, having this awareness, and the way is if your life just feels like a series of obligations. If your life just feels like a checklist of obligations all the time, then it's that because you're giving so much of your energy away to everyone else but yourself. You're pouring from this empty cup. So I would say, if you can find more things, it sounds so simple, but if you can do more of the things that you enjoy, and even if you don't know what those things are, because a lot of times we don't even know what they are, because we get so programmed in doing things for other people. So we do things that we think that we like, but we're like, no, I don't actually like that. So taking the time to have that place where you kind of rediscover who you are. Because the truth, this is the greatest love story, and it's so cheesy to say this, but the greatest love story you're ever going to have is with yourself. And the more that you understand yourself, the more awareness you have for yourself, the more that you don't have shame for the patterns that you've done, the things. You just give yourself grace, and then you say, okay, well, I'm not going to do that again, and I'm going to set this. And you start with little boundaries, right? You start with little boundaries. You don't have to go to the big boundary with the person at work who talks your ear off and tells you all their marital issues and everything else and wastes your time for an hour. And you're like, I just want to get away from this. Oh my God, I don't want to be around this, or whatever's going on. You can set boundaries around that.
My wife has got the same superpower that you do. And I'm the person that holds space for her, right? So I'm that person you were talking about for her.
Yeah.
And I remember earlier on in our marriage realizing that about her. It was something that I realized about her, and I was like, oh, she needs that person to help her learn how to set healthy boundaries. She's gotten really good at it over the last 15 years. And but it started off with things like simple things, like you can choose how you want to do your hair. You don't have to do your hair the way your parents wanted it done, right? You're an adult now.
Yeah.
And simple things like that, and stuff like where do you want to go for dinner? And she's like, wherever you want to go. I'm like, well, that's not what you want. What do you want?
Right.
And so just someone who is looking out for your best interest. That's what you mean by someone who
Yeah. Yeah.
uh,
Yeah. And my husband's gotten so good at that as well. Like he knows me so well. Like he's just like, you okay? You okay? You need like something like chocolate or you need some food, like it's always about food. I'm like, cook me something. But yeah, I think, and that's the thing. I mean, I think whoever it is, that space plays for you to let you to feel safe, to be able to talk about those boundaries. It's scary putting in boundaries. It's uncomfortable because if you've never put boundaries in your life and you've always done other things for other people, then and especially take responsibility for everyone else's emotions. And that's just a control thing anyway, because you're just
yeah.
trying to control. Like,
And when you get that balance, right? When you know how to set your own boundaries, set your things, when you do show up for the people who need that, you can
yeah,
really knock it out of the park for them, right? You
yes,
can give them so much value and you can help them in such profound ways.
yeah,
And like I've only heard a little bit of your story, but if you're anything like my wife, I've seen her completely change someone's life in the course of an afternoon because of how she can hold space for people, right? Because she has
yeah,
that superpower, and it's
yeah.
very cool. So to see it in someone who's a founder and who's doing something with their business, and specifically in like recruiting, like who would have thought? But that's, I mean, it
I know.
makes sense, right? That as a matchmaker
I mean,
doing
I
what you're
think
doing,
that's the
right?
thing. But isn't that what it is? Isn't that what it is? The shift is the superheroes, the stories need to show up in everyday life. Like, not everyone can be a spiritual coach. Not everyone can teach meditation. Not everyone's going to be able to do breath work. I love all those things. I mean, don't get me wrong. I have lots of friends that do all the all those things, and they're amazing and incredible. But like, chefs need to be it, and superheroes need to be running organizations and companies and everyday things, because that's really where the shift comes from,
Yeah,
right?
that's why I run this show.
Yeah,
So,
exactly.
I want to talk to you then about your common enemy, right? Every superhero has an arch nemesis. It's a thing that they constantly have to fight against in their world. And in the world of business, we generally put it in the context of your clients, and it's a mindset or it's a flaw that you're constantly having to fight to overcome, so you can actually get them the result that they came to you for. And for something like you, I would imagine it's probably in that world of like, hey, this is what people expect recruiting to be, and here's the new world you're trying to build. But what do you think your common enemy is in what you do?
Honestly, I think it's the unicorn piece with clients. I think it's clients have this unicorn, not all, and I don't want to say all, but a lot of times what happens is when I first start working with the client, they've had a position open for a long time and they have this like essentials list of 3 pages long. And it's really not one job. It's like 4 jobs. And I'm like, no, this isn't one job, right? This is like 2 or 3 jobs. I'm like, so I think that's number one is opening up their idea to, they have this very specific, limited sort of idea of what a perfect candidate looks like. And a lot of it's from a skills perspective. The culture piece, oh yeah, the culture piece, but the culture piece, like, let's really talk about the culture piece, like, because the values piece of this person is so important. So I think that's number one, is like my arch net is the unicorn piece. But I think the second level of that is the employees that are high producers and are low value. I think they're the most difficult types of people for organizations, the ones that make a lot of money for your company, but also are low value. And a lot of times those are the ones in leadership roles. And those leaders have limited views, right? Because they're not valuing the values piece. They only are valuing the person that can make a lot of money for the company. But
Yeah.
it's more than that.
And it has to be, especially if you want to grow. And it's interesting. So like on your first part, like the unicorn employee, I remember as a younger entrepreneur thinking that's what I needed. Right? I needed to find a unicorn. Right? I was like, I
Yeah.
need someone who could do all these things. I need someone who could be me. And I'm like, but that's not actually what I'm looking for. When people like CEOs are kind of a weird, especially founder CEOs, right? Like myself, we're a weird bunch. We're like, we can do everything.
Right.
That's because we have to, right? You have to learn
Because we have no choice.
You have no choice. You just have to learn to do it all. So you're like, when people are like, you got to replace yourself in your business. So your first thought is, so I need to find someone else who's as crazy as I am, a little bit of everything.
But they're not going to be you.
Yeah, they're not going to be you. And so what I have learned, and hopefully this is the correct path, but you find people. So here's my thoughts: is values and communication is like 80%, and skills is like 20%. And as long as they can do the work, or the work that they needs to be done can be trained, like the values and communication are the biggest things. And what I've been trying to work on is all of my staff now is, and the way we've built our whole business now is single task, right? Like we have this role that does this one set of things. It requires this one set of skills. And then you can hire based on communication, and you can hire based on values. And then it's like one set of skills that you're looking for, which makes finding people so much easier. Because you're like, I'm not looking for all these things. I'm looking for someone who can do
Right.
this and do this
Yeah.
really well.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, I think that excuse me, I'm gonna sneeze. But I think, oh, sorry. I think the thing about the skills piece is it depends. I mean, if you're in a role where it's very, very technical and there are very specific, things that, like, I do a lot of work with construction. Like, you project manager construction, you do need to know how, like,
Like
pretty
you need to know
technical.
how to do it, right?
Yeah, you need to know how to do it. You need to know construction really well. You need to know how to work with vendors, and you need to know budgets and those types of things. Yes, all those things are very, very important. But I think the limitation is believing that you have to find someone who comes from the exact same type of company that you've come from versus someone who maybe doesn't have as much of one type of experience that can be trainable. What parts are really trainable? Because some of them are essential skills, but what parts of it, and the communication piece is so important. Like, it is so important. I mean, how someone can even write an email. How do they speak to you? Because, we're the first line of communication with candidates, right? So if a candidate's rude to us, dismissive towards us, doesn't follow up with us in any way, I'm like, no. And I tell my clients that as well. Like, I'm like, even if they have like every single checkbox, if they're showing up from that way, that's not someone you want.
Yeah.
Because that's going to show up anyway, even if they have all the skills. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Because it's those micro things.
Because I have found that because we're a podcasting agency, right? So we run podcasts for all this stuff. So we do, like, our major roles are all, it's like design, audio editing, video editing,
Right.
writing, project management. So there's only like 5 or 6 skills that we're looking for, and we tend to silo those out of those skills. But like design, for instance, like they have to be able to be a good designer. Like the skill is a required part. That's like the foundation. But you can find a lot of really good designers, right? It's not like they're a dime a dozen or anything, but there's a lot of people who are really good designers, and what we're looking for is like, okay, you're a good designer, that's how you get in the door, and then it's the communication culture piece and the values.
Yeah.
Like that's what's going to decide whether or not you're going to be successful here, whether or not you're going to enjoy working for us, whether or not you're going to make it past the first couple of weeks, right? And that's where that's why you have to focus on those things. That's why
And also, I think there's another side to it. There's a responsibility piece on the employer that when you do onboard these people, these new employees, the onboarding piece is so important. The training, again, it's the safety piece. Like, they don't know you, they've never worked with you. There has to be that understanding that they're stepping into something completely new, and there needs to be, the leadership needs to create that environment for them to feel safe and to show them what growth opportunities might look like or what the next plans are. Some type of conversations like that as well. And also some training, like deliberate training, not just, okay, well, I could squeeze you in for like a 2-hour place or whatever it is, but like a training plan. It's really important. As well.
It's actually that's fun to hear, because my ops person and I, on Monday, we had our ops meeting, and we were putting together our list of like priorities, and I mentioned but our other priority on there was onboarding and offboarding, and putting how we put the onboarding training together for each of the roles. And I was like, we don't have all of that yet. We have some of it, and like a lot of it just, again, because we're still a young company, I'm just doing it, right?
Yeah.
And so we're like, that's sort of one of our next systems we're looking at, is how do we take each one of these roles and build like our onboarding training. And so we built our first one, which is just our communication standards in the company, and it's like a short little like set of, I think it was maybe like 20 minutes of things that go over all of our communication things. But it's like, I want to get systems for all of the things, like everything in there that's like training for the role. Like, hey, here's all of your expectations. Here's how they work. Here's how we work in our project management system. Here's how you work with the team. Here's how you're going to work with the clients that we work with. And so it's not all in my head, and it's part of like onboarding training.
We need it's all like it's just so funny, because this is what I'm working on my own business. It's this whole blueprint. Like, what is the magic, right? What does the magic look like, and what's the blueprint look like? And taking all the ideas and everything I do and putting it on paper and making sure it's like you talked about, if I got hit by a bus, could someone else do it?
Yeah,
Right?
absolutely.
I want to be able to create that kind of
So,
place.
so my next question for you then, if your common enemy is what you fight against, the flip side of that coin is what you fight for, right? Your driving force. And, just like Spider-Man fights to save New York, or Batman fights to save Gotham, or Google fights to index and categorize all the world's information, what is it that you fight for? What's your mission in your business?
I think my mission is to create, it's so cheesy, but I really want to create a better dynamic in our world. I really believe in that. And I believe that my influence in doing that is my ability to help people, companies like owners and leadership teams have a better life, really, because they have someone else helping them with this process, and they can go home and they can breathe at the end of the day, and they can actually like have the time to spend with their family, and they're not worried about all these things. And on the flip side of that, on the candidate side, it's the same thing. I want to put people in good organizations that have the right values and that have the right growth and are on the right, taking the bus the right way. And I want to bring the people that are just like that want that and are like, that's where they're supposed to be. And I want to bring them there as well, because I want to create that value for them, because it's just, all of it is just, it really feels good to help people, because work is so important. What we do is so important. We're there a lot. It affects our mental health. It affects everything. And so being able to create an environment or a way of doing it that's very seamless and easy and very honest and just upfront, it's just something that I feel like is needed in our world, honestly.
So here's I'm going to switch on encouragement mode here for a minute instead of podcaster mode.
Well,
Own that. It's not cheesy, and it's something that right. It's something that we need more of, right? We need more of that mentality. We need to see the better models succeed. So own it and step into it,
Thanks.
and just
I like
own
that.
superpower, right? And my other encouragement on that is name it, right? Like you have like these set of values, name it, right? Like I've got my sort of my beginning one here with this family first entrepreneurship, right? Name your methodology and then own it and be like, this is the value I'm bringing to the world, and I'm going to make your life better, and I'm going to make the employees' lives better. And you're going to make a dent, right? You're going to make a dent, and that's what we're doing this for.
Well, I appreciate your support. Thank you. Yeah. I mean, that is what it is, right? I want to create a model that is new and different, and that is honestly just better and more aligned to a better way. That's it.
So I was just talking about this with my son the other day, and I think you'll probably appreciate this, right? Because your daughter's like 11 years old. They get to that age like right after 10, 11, where you can start having like real conversations with them, like adult conversations, because they can keep up, right? They can like hold the stuff in their head. And we were talking, and I was like, listen, I'm always going to be a little bit jealous of you. And he was like, because we were talking about something, I think windsurfing, because we're learning to windsurf together. And he's 13, and he's learning to windsurf, which is like I've wanted to do my whole life, but I've only just gotten to be able to the point where I can do it at like 40. I'm like,
yeah,
but he's getting to do it at 13, which means he'll have his whole life to get good at it. I'll never have that opportunity. And that's just one of many things that like our whole life and our whole job as parents is how do we put them in so much further forward of a place than we started, right? That's what my parents did for me. Right? And I look at like everything that they started with and all the things that I've gotten to do that they've never got to do because of how much they put in front, how much effort they put to make my world better. And I was like, that's just a small little microcosm, but what you're doing in your business is the same thing. You're like, listen, we're gonna elevate this conversation. We're gonna shift the world. We're gonna make it a better place, and it makes it better for everyone, right? It makes the whole world, especially when the model's just successful, because other people start looking and go, I like this. I want more of this. And it spreads.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, and it is so true though. I mean, you do as parents, you want to create these experiences for your kids that maybe you didn't have, so that they can, have those experiences, and they can grow and learn and have the opportunity, like at 13, to do something that you wanted to do, at 40. You know what I mean? You're having to do 40. And I think that's the same thing. I mean, And I'm really direct with candidates too. Like, I'm really direct with them. I mean, like I had a candidate recently and I was like, look, I really like you, but you're very negative. Like and I know you're frustrated because you've been looking for a job and this is a really frustrating time, but I want to, and I asked them, I say it like this, can I be honest with you? And they're like, yes. And I'm like, you have great experience. I can tell you're really struggling. I know you're really having a hard time with this, but every time you're talking about a company and you're not taking responsibility for any part of it as to why it didn't work out, that's showing something. So it needs to be a conversation with yourself on understanding, like, I understand you're really frustrated and you didn't have the best experience here, but you don't want to bring that frustration when you're talking to other companies because you're a great candidate and you have a great experience. And I know that, and she started crying. She's like, it's been so hard, And I was like, no, I get it, And she was like, well, I appreciate you being honest with me. I said, practice. And I tell, so I do try to like give kind of my 2 cents for what it's worth, because I mean, people deserve to be in good jobs with companies that like care about them and value them and pay them well. Like they deserve that. Like people settle for so much less than what they're deserving at.
And there's a lot of us, right? There's a lot of good companies that will pay you well.
There are a lot of good companies.
Right.
People just don't realize they exist. That's the thing. Like all the companies I'm working with are such great companies. They're all very positive based, growth oriented, but people don't know they exist.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm gonna move on. I got a couple more questions for you.
Sorry.
This one is my practical question. I call it my hero's tool belt, right? And just like every superhero has like their awesome gadgets like batarangs or web slingers or laser eyes or their big magical hammer. I'm gonna talk about the top 1 or maybe 2 tools you couldn't live without in your business. Could be anything, like your notepad, your calendar, marketing tools, something you use to actually do what you do. What's something that you think is essential to getting your job done as a recruiter?
My phone. First, I could not do my job without my phone. It would just not work because at the end of the day, the email, text messaging thing, you have to pick up the phone and have conversations with people. It's just what it is. Number 2, I think LinkedIn, probably. LinkedIn and Indeed. Like Indeed is I know people hate Indeed when they say bad things, but it really is a great place to find candidates. But you really have to understand how it works. And you have to keep an eye on it because they'll try to charge you like $1 million, if you don't pay attention to that post. Before you're like, what is this? But I think, that honestly, I think the phone is like the most.
So here's my question. Has the phone shifted at all to be more video chat stuff like FaceTime, Zoom, stuff like this? Or is it still phone call? Right. And I wouldn't use the old version of phone call because now it's like this, right?
Not the rotary one. I do like Zooms and those types of things, but I don't know what other recruiters do. I'm pretty old fashioned. I'm just a very like, let's get on the phone. Let's have a conversation. Not some formal thing. Let's pick up the phone. Hi, how are you? Let's have a conversation. Sometimes the next interview I'll do like a video, or if my clients want a video piece, we can do that as well. And I know a lot of recruiters are moving to that. But the challenge with it is people are working. So if someone's working and they're busy, like they're at work, they have families, they did apply for your job. Like, it's like, okay, I need you to stop everything you're doing. I need to set up this Zoom call. I need you to get away. I need you to have this 30-minute Zoom call with me. And just for the preliminary thing and then all this other stuff. So it sounds like a lot of hassle for me, to be honest, for the candidates. Seems like it would just be easier just to call them and be like, okay, well, here's the job. Tell me what you do. This is who it is. And I'm real honest with candidates too. I'm like, what are you looking for? And they're like, okay, well, I'm like, well, it doesn't pay that, and they're like, okay. And I'm like, I don't think it's the right match, or I think this, whatever it might be. I'm very specific about it. And I'm very honest with them. What the culture is, I
think it's interesting that nowadays the phone is still such a powerful tool, right? And I've shifted a lot of our stuff where what we do to video calls, but still, like I've been surprised by the number of people who are like, listen, the best tool ever is my phone. It's either one or two things, phone or calendar. Those are like the two big ones.
Oh yeah, I need my calendar too, so you can add that because if I didn't have my calendar, I have no idea.
Like without the calendar,
I know. I
Um,
get on my calendar. I'm like, okay, this is what I have going on today. Like, I have no idea.
it was funny. My
um,
my mom, a number of years ago, she was like, she tried to. I don't remember what we were talking about, but I was like, listen, if it's not on my calendar, it doesn't exist. And she was like, you just operate your life out your calendar. I'm like, 100%. Like, if it's not on my
yes,
calendar, it does not exist. She
that's
was
how
like,
I
that's
feel. It's how my
very
calendar
good.
is. How my business is. I know.
Yeah,
So I don't know. I mean, again, I'm pretty old school. I mean, I use all the technologies and stuff, but I think people have asked me, like, what about the AI thing? And what about the fact they're bringing in AI for the hiring process? Like, there's companies that are using AI to do like automated interviews with people, like on the phone and all this kind of stuff. And I'm like, okay, well, AI is not a person. I
yeah,
mean, I think you can utilize it from a sourcing perspective. I used one. I didn't have much success with it. I spent a good amount of money. I wanted to use it out. I wanted to see what the whole thing looked like. I'm sourcing candidates, right? Like, okay, they say, oh, they can get no. The level of candidates, we're not even halfway the level of what we
yeah.
present to our clients.
We have all this stuff going with AI. We do a lot of AI work with our company, and
Yeah.
I've realized something really important. The AI is not human, which is, we
No.
all know that. But so
And
the
it's
important
really
part for
not
that
human.
is what are humans uniquely good at, and what are robots uniquely good at, right? And when you marry those two things together, that's where you get the superpowers. And so
Yeah.
humans are really good at creativity and learning and community and culture and values, right? Those are things that are all like uniquely human. And robots are really good at like structure and holding
Yeah.
lots of data in their head at one time.
Yeah.
And the to use a really technical term, irreducibly complex computation, right? Like those are things that that humans aren't good at. And
Yes.
so we look at things, we're like, okay, how do we take human beings who have these set of skills, for our agency, a lot of it's creativity, and make their
Right.
creativity faster and better and stronger by
Right.
using AI instead of trying
Right.
to replace humans with AI.
Yeah.
Learn how to make humans superhumans with AI.
It's exactly what I do too. I use the AI a lot with sourcing with like Indeed and different sites to go out and find things. I mean, I use it, but at the end of the day, the conversation still is a human. Recruiting
Yeah,
is one of those things. It's like matchmaking, like you're not dealing with a service, right? You're not selling a product. You're not selling anything. You're selling it. I
you're
mean, not
connecting
selling, but you know
people.
what I mean? You're marrying two people. So
Yeah,
it is like a totally, I can't really think of another industry that's very similar to it. Like bringing two people together and like bringing them together, or maybe a matchmaker if
yeah,
they're like, it's kind of the same idea a little bit, but
yeah.
it's sort of that
Just
same
different
idea.
different outcome, right? Instead of lovers, you got employers.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's the
Kind
same
of
kind of
different.
thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
But
I got a
yeah.
I got one more question for you, and that's on your guiding principles, right? One of the things that makes heroes heroic is that they live by a code. For instance, Batman never kills his enemies. He only ever brings them to Arkham Asylum. So as we wrap up this interview, I want to talk about the top one, maybe two principles that you live your life by. Maybe something you wish you knew when you first started out on your own hero's journey.
I just always do the right thing for my clients and my candidates. If I said I'm going to do something, I do it, and I take responsibility. When I make a mistake, I forget to call someone, I forget to send an invitation, or I send an invoice wrong, or all the multiple things that I've done, or something gets messed up, or I send the wrong person for an interview, which that has happened as well. I don't, I just take responsibility and say sorry. And I learn from it. That's really that
Yeah,
simple. Right.
yeah, I love that, and you probably won't be surprised to know this because you work in entrepreneurial circles. But that answer, integrity, some form of integrity, has been the number one response to that question. Like 99% of the people that I ask that question on this podcast respond with some version of integrity. And it strikes me because one of the things that I started this podcast for was that cultural shift of, our culture looks at entrepreneurship as villains, right?
Right.
It's always, every story you read on see on television, or read in books or watch on the children's TV show, it's always some variation of entrepreneur spills oil on ducks for money, right? which is true, right? You see it in the movies, and you're like I
Or
remember
like the
last,
black suits and like the slick tack hair. And it's like,
yeah,
and
and
it's
you're
like
like,
a
that's just not
shadiness.
entrepreneurship. That's not what
Yeah.
it is.
Right.
And
Yeah.
what
That's just
was it?
toxic. It's just
The
toxic.
movie that came out last year, Free Guy, which was Ryan Reynolds. He's like,
I didn't
and
see it.
it was wonderful. It was a great story, but the crunch point of the story was entrepreneur kills life for money, right? Like that was the villain was entrepreneur is bad guy because he's trying to do this thing for money. And you're like, it's not reality. In the real world, uh, entrepreneurs are driven by integrity and driven by value and driven by this equal exchange of value with each other. And so I just love to hear that, and to see it, continue to be confirmed with everyone we talk to on the show. So anyways, I appreciate that.
Good to know. Thank you.
Yeah. So that is basically a wrap on our interview, but I do finish every interview with something I call the Heroes Challenge. And I do this to help get access to stories that we might not otherwise get on our own, because, not everyone's out doing the podcast rounds like you and I might do. So the question is simple. Do you have someone in your network that you think has a cool entrepreneurial story? Who are they? First names are fine. And why do you think they should come share their story with us here on the Hero Show?
Oh gosh. I don't know. I do have I don't know. I would have to I do have some friends who have some really interesting backgrounds, but I don't know if I would want, I'd have to ask them before. Again,
Well,
I'm very
we can see
yeah.
if they're interested, maybe make an introduction after the show. We always get some good
Yeah, I do
so-
have some friends that have some fairly incredible stories and have been through a lot of things and are definitely entrepreneurs. So I'll definitely think about some people. Put me on the spot there. I'll have to think about it.
So in comic books, there's always the crowd of people who are cheering and clapping for the acts of heroism. So our analogous to that as we close is, where can people find you if they want your help? Where can they light up the bat signal, so to speak, and say, hey, Suman, I would love to get your help recruiting for my business? And I think more importantly than where is, who are the types of people to reach out?
I think if you are a smaller business and you have less than 200 people and you have a small HR team, maybe you have an HR team, maybe there's no one, and you're really struggling to find good people and you're growing and you're expanding and you don't have the time to do it, and we do a lot of work right now we're doing a lot of work in construction, and honestly construction of any level, residential, commercial, new home builders, multifamily, luxury of hotels, all of it, GCs, everything. If you're looking for project managers, superintendents, any types of estimators, we have a huge network and we do it all over the country. We also working with high-end landscape installation companies as well. So yeah, so that's our clients. Or if you're just someone who wants to talk and you want some ideas, like a company or something, and if you're a candidate and you have looking for a new position and you're in construction or anything like that, please send me your resume as well, because I have new positions all the time. You can find me on my website. It's it's cherrytalentgroup.com, cherrytalentgroup.com. I'm all over LinkedIn, Suman Cherry. You can find me. You can email me. It's really easy. It's suman@cherrytalentgroup.com. So
Awesome.
Yeah. You can Google me. I'm all over the place. So.
If you're in that space where you're either looking to hire or you're looking for to get hired, I would definitely recommend reaching out to Suman. Obviously, you got to hear a lot of her story here today and just the kind of values that she wants to put forth into the world. So I appreciate that. And Suman, thank you so much for coming on and sharing your story with us here today. I enjoyed getting to hear your side of the story, seeing what you're doing in recruiting and seeing that there are new models of people trying to shift that. So that's really fascinating, and I appreciate it. Do you have any final words of wisdom for our audience before I hit this stop record button?
I would just say that, I think the key, and you probably understand this as well, is that you have to do things before you're ready a lot of times, because, hiring is one of those things. You don't want to be put in a situation where if you have the opportunity to start looking for someone before you're ready, it's always optimal time to do it, because you don't want people in your organization to get burned out because they're taking on a lot of other responsibilities. And it puts you in a very scarcity place where you're just having to make kind of more desperate based decisions when you're hiring people. So I would definitely say you have to hire before you're ready. It's just what it is.
I agree with that completely, because I've made that other mistake where you hire after you're ready. Yes. And my new rule of thumb is 80% of capacity for our output. We start the hiring process.
Yeah.
And I try to keep all of my staff at 80% capacity or lower, because they need the free time to think and to move and to just be human.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
and so if you're running someone at 100% capacity all the time, they're not going to be putting in their best work,
No.
and you're always sort of like struggling as a business to
Yep.
just get people in right on time. And so we try to keep everything at that 80% capacity. So I agree with that completely, spoken from experience.
Well, I mean, it sounds like you guys really, it sounds like what you're doing with the company, like you've put some really impactful things, and you're doing it. I mean, just having this conversation with you, I can see that you're really doing it the way that really is going to create a lot of value for your company and your people as well, and your growth. So I really
Well, I
think
certainly
it's
hope so.
amazing. Yeah. Yeah. I think it's amazing for sure.
Thank you very much. And thank you
You're
for coming on the
welcome.
show today.
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for tuning in to this week's episode of The Hero Show, where we work to shift the cultural narrative around entrepreneurship and celebrate the heropreneurs who make our world a better place. Don't forget to visit our website at theheroshow.tv, where you can subscribe to the show on iTunes, Spotify, or via RSS, so you'll never miss an episode. If you found value in our show, we'd truly appreciate a rating on iTunes. Or better yet, share it with a friend to help us spread the message of entrepreneurship as a force for good. Curious to learn more about the stories and insights of these incredible heropreneurs? Check out our in-depth interviews and resources on our website. Together, let's support and inspire the next generation of entrepreneurs as they embark on their own heroic journeys. Join us again next week for another episode of The Hero Show, where we'll continue to explore the world of heropreneurs, their superpowers, and the positive impact they bring to our lives. Until then, stay heroic.